So I talked about Slovis in the last video and talked about how I wasn't as big on him as I think some others are. Probably lower on him than a lot of others. It's ironic, his old running mate at USC, JT Daniels, is who I'm going to talk about now. And what I'm really trying to understand here, like Slovis was one thing. And yeah, I don't see it at this point. When it comes to JT Daniels, not only do I not see it, I don't know if we've ever seen it. I don't know why anybody would think we have seen it or will ever see it. Like, this is an example of just because you play at a big-time program does not make you a big-time quarterback. JT Daniels, for him to be a first-round pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, he would have to have some type of Burrow-like historic year. He would have to sit there and have more confidence in his trail leg that was injured before, when he tore the ACL in. Like, he'd have to get a stronger arm. Like, he'd have to do so many things. I just don't see it being feasible or reasonable. Like, I'm surprised that this guy's name's been brought up as much as it has, and maybe that's because he plays at Georgia, and maybe that's because he put up some big numbers in some big games. But again, I think we're talking about the confusing and the blurring of the lines between results and projectable traits. Results are one thing. Results are great. Results are nice. But at some point in time, you got to transition that to say, doesn't matter if a dude in a full season, let's say, threw for 30 or 40 touchdowns. You know, how do those traits project to the NFL? How do you project the player at the NFL? And I ain't really projecting a whole lot here, admittedly, right now with JT Daniels. Like, I even struggled to really come up with some strengths in this game. I'm just being real with you. I know he didn't play a lot in 2020, but there wasn't a ton that really impressed me or jumped off the screen or said to me, wow, this dude has this or this dude has that. Like, he does show some decent mental awareness for the game. That's probably, I think, his greatest strength. Shows the ability to read the defense, move safeties with his eyes, work through and back with his progressions. Like, he did that at a pretty decent level in his limited action in 2020. So, you know, if you're talking about something that you could potentially project to the NFL level, you could say that. But then you could also say there are plenty of times that he just locked on to his primary read. And, you know, that's also true. And a lot of younger quarterbacks, I think, do that. That's why I said he shows the ability versus consistently does it. He flashes the ability to throw with touch and anticipation. Like, I like his ability to throw with different velocity and to different spots. You know, it's not great, but it's pretty good. You know, in terms of when he gets on the move, he's not a great athlete, but he does a solid job of squaring up his shoulders and turning himself into his throw, especially when he's rolling out to the right, to the left, not so much, but to the right, he's pretty effective in that case. So, you know, that's something that does translate to the NFL level. But when I look at him, damn near everything else doesn't. He's got average, at best, arm strength. He struggles to get velocity on his throws to all three levels. Like, even if you want to sit there and say, well, he threw some deep balls at Georgia in 2020 that went 45, 50 yards down the field. Yes, he also had to put a shit ton of air under him. Like, he was not throwing those on ropes. He was not. There's some of you that are watching this now that could go out in the yard and throw a football 45 or 50 yards. He has to put so much air under it in order for it to get there. Like, it's horrendous. It's really going to jump up and bite him because teams are going to be able to play their defenders close, and you could run into a situation where, especially at the NFL, guys are going to be able to sit on him and going to be pick six crazy. He's just not going to be able to fit the ball into tight windows. He looks scrambled and scared in the pocket too often, like pretty consistently. Like, he legitimately looks scared. He knows almost too well the rush is coming. Not necessarily from a standpoint of knowing where it is, being able to anticipate it, feel it, and be able to move and adjust. More like, oh my God, the rush is coming. I know it's coming. What the hell do I do? Far too much of that in 2020, even with the limited number of games that he played. He looks scared. He looks scrambled and flustered in the pocket far too often. There's a lot of double pumps and some padding of the ball before throwing, Like, that speaks to a little bit not trusting what you see. You know, it just also adds time to your release. Like, as you're sitting there patting the ball, you got a receiver that could be breaking open or is about to break open. You're still completing this motion where you're missing your window of opportunity to throw because, again, you're doing this or you're doing this. He did that far too often in 2020. He's a limited athlete. He's not much of a threat to run the ball. He's not natural all that much in terms of extending plays. Like I said, he's okay when he gets out of the pocket and he's rolling out to the right. But he's certainly not somebody I look at and I sit there and say, wow, man, he's got this great improvisational ability. He's got this ability to extend plays all over the place. He's got this ability when the going gets tough to pick up some yards with his feet. He ain't doing that shit. Like, he is a borderline functional athlete at the very best, even for the quarterback position. I do not think it is a requirement or absolute must that you have to have a great scrambler at quarterback in today's NFL. I do think you have to have somebody that can move and isn't totally statuesque in the pocket, because as soon as anything breaks down in terms of structure, protection, they're in a lot of trouble. Daniels has just enough, but it's not certainly that I would think he would hang his hat on. His lower body mechanics break down in the pocket far too often, again, especially when throwing under pressure. Like his upper body and his lower body get out of sync. You see plenty of times where he's throwing with just his arms. He hasn't even moved his feet. He hasn't even stepped into his throw, which, again, for a kind of noodle-arm dude, isn't an ideal thing at all. Just not a lot of desire when you talk about a guy like this that plays scared too often in the pocket and has limited, and I want to emphasize again, limited physical traits. In terms of what I saw, like, I just don't get the appeal. And then on top of that, like you talk about, he was a primary starter for USC back in 2018, but I think he's played, 5 games the past couple of years? Tore his ACL in 2019, didn't get the job back from Slovis. Then 2020, this past season, he played, 4 games, I think? Started maybe 4 games. He didn't even win the job out of camp. And I understand sometimes that happens. Sometimes that's coaches being really stupid. And when you talk about Georgia and you talk about Kirby Smart, when you talk about the fucking quarterback position, he had his hands on Justin Fields and he went with Jake fucking Fromm. Like, he's built a really good program down there at Georgia, but sometimes those decisions are head-scratching to say the least. But 5 games played the past 2 seasons, didn't win the job out of camp. And it wasn't like he was losing out to a Justin Fields type of guy. He certainly wasn't. Like, he just lost out to just another dude, basically. And when I look at this, I am struggling to understand what people see. I'm struggling to understand why his name is even being floated out there. Like, similar to a Bo Nix. What's the big deal? What makes them so special? And when you think about a few years back, when they were talking about he was the number 1 quarterback in his class, but then he graduated early, so he ended up being in the same class as Trevor Lawrence. He ended up being the number 2 quarterback. If anything, that is an important reminder of a couple of things. A, just because guys put up big numbers in high school doesn't necessarily mean shit. B, that there's a lot of physical and mental growth that has to happen when you transition from even high school to college, let alone college to the NFL. That a lot of times those dudes that were big man on campus, top high school players, top high school quarterbacks, that shit just doesn't translate to the next level. And, I look at JT Daniels, and you can craft your offense around him, and you can structure your offense around him at the college level, mask some of the deficiencies, get away with some superior talent around him on offense, and be able to function. But if I had to tell you right now, like, with the different quarterbacks in this class, there might be a couple of them. Let's say you were on the road in Alabama and you've got the ball on your 20-yard line, 2 minutes to go, maybe 1 timeout. You got to go 80 yards to score a touchdown. Like, do you trust JT Daniels in that spot to truly make the big plays and get you there? Hell no. You're nuts if you do. Maybe he gets lucky because he throws a wide receiver screen and then a wide receiver goes 50 yards down the field and changes and flips field position. But goddamn, like, I look at him, my NFL comparison for him, he's just another 3rd-string practice squad guy as far as I can see. I got like a 7th round grade on him, and right now I feel that's being generous. Yeah. Blast away on me in the comments if you want, but please seriously tell me what I'm missing. Help educate me. Help Help inform me better. Tell me what I'm not looking at that I should look at, what I'm not factoring in that I should, because what I see is a noodle-armed, non-athletic, scaredy cat in the fucking pocket. Yeah, I'm good on JT Daniels right now. He's going to need to show a ton of growth and improvement to even be thought of as a mid-round pick, let alone a first-round pick next year. Shit.